Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Candice and Elisa show. Elisa, for me, I would have never thought that this is what we'd be speaking about today, but I think it actually speaks to so many things that I think all of us will be able to relate to. And it has been all over the media headlines, and that is the new Britney Spears documentary, Free Britney Spears. Or is it Framing Britney Spears, I'd say. And I watched some of it, and then I watched, the perspectives around it. I read the New York Post, and I read, different outlets, as well as watching The View and what the woman had to say about this documentary. And of course, I too watched a little bit in preparation for this. And there were so many themes that came up for me. And I remember just feeling sad, to be honest. I felt sad. I felt heavy. And I just related to a degree that I shouldn't probably be relating, but I think as a woman, I couldn't help but relate. And basically, for people who do not know, Britney Spears has been under conservatorship, which is basically her father gets to control how she spends her money and what she really does. She's got no privileges of being an adult. And the history of this being reversed in the state of California, I believe, is zero. It has never been reversed in the history of, it being granted. And this is what people are fighting against, hence the hashtag Freeing Britney Spears. But this documentary highlighted so many different things, from the fact that she was sexualized from the age of 10, being asked about like her boyfriend. By the time she was 16, she was being asked about her breasts and her sexiness. By the time she was 19 and 20, she was asked about being a virgin and being outed and then being called a whore. And there were just so many themes that were playing in my mind, Elisa. And I just want to know, like, where do you stand with this? What are you thinking?
I mean, I completely agree with you. I think the sentiment is one of sadness. And I still remember watching the news back in 2007 when she was having this big breakdown and everything. And I just remember thinking then, man, the way that her story is being told is so unempathetic and so damaging. Because, I think media has the power to help and heal or to destroy and hinder. And, we have seen, especially the paparazzi group, in this documentary, it stipulated that Britney's photographs were sometimes running for $1 million, a pop. And it's like, of course, people are going to be incentivized by doing something like that. But what does it actually mean for the person that's actually going through everything? And, what rules and regulations of ethics do we ever tap into when it boils down to reporting on celebrities, right? We're all sometimes living vicariously through them or, having this life of glamour that we think. But the reality of the matter is that every step of their way at that level starts to get documented. And if the media suddenly decides they don't like you for whatever reason, they can destroy your life. So I think it's massively unfair, and certainly having films like this is really important as a reminder of how damaging it can be. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I echo all your sentiments. And for me, I think there's so many parallels that I'm drawing between Britney's story now, and I mean, she did date Justin Timberlake, and of course, she was completely vilified by that breakup because Justin took complete control of the narrative and the media completely sided with him. And then I went on to look at, historical figures, and I looked at, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, and I'm looking at, Princess Diana and Prince Charles. And I look at these women in history, right? Even as far as looking closer by, which is, your Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, and all these people, how initially when a story breaks, the woman is completely crucified and the man is made a victim. This is probably one of the only places where this happens, right? When a man is considered a victim in any form is when a woman is involved. Yet every other time, they are the king of the jungle. They should be glorified and, celebrated. And I have nothing against men. I just find it very interesting as to, when we were looking at Meghan Markle, for example, what was reported, as you were saying about the destruction of the media, is the fact that this woman came and she completely brainwashed this prince into marrying her and leaving his whole family. I'm like, was he there? Like, you know, like, did he have any free will? Was she holding a gun? Did she drug him? Like, how did this happen? You know, and we look at it and we see how so often, whenever a woman is the one who is not speaking to public favor, I would say, or even if it's not speaking to public favor, it's if a woman isn't liked, if a woman doesn't come across as, I'm completely nice and, you know, anything you give me, I will take it. I'm so grateful for your mercy. Then we get completely crucified. If you have a strong voice, if you have a strong presence, there is an element of crucifixion that you almost anticipate into some degree. And I don't know how you feel about this. Am I reaching, or is this something that is making sense to you? I don't know.
No, it makes sense. I mean, I do think that there are some very strong male voices out there who are fighting against this. But I think that historically, I mean, let's not forget that, you know, the two largest religions in the world, you know, two of the largest religions in the world are based on the Bible and the Old Testament, which boils down to Adam and Eve in Genesis, and Eve having been the reason that we're all stuck here and not in paradise, right? You know, we are the seductress, you know, and this is important because the very foundations of belief, like very ingrained belief systems, are negative towards the woman. And I think that that's certainly something that yes is translated in media. And the whole situation with Meghan Markle, let's also not forget that not only was she a woman, she was the first Black woman that was in the royal family, who also happened to be incredibly financially independent, having been an actor. And she, you know, she just obviously was different. And British society, you know, we don't always go for difference, and if we do, it's slow. So I think, yeah, there are many layers. It's gender, it's race, but certainly I think, you know, what it does boil down to is women are more often vilified than not, I think. And certainly, like you said, with Harvey Weinstein and all these other men that have been accused by women of committing crimes, it is presented in such a way like the poor man got caught. You know, the poor man, well, you know, somebody cried wolf on him. No, don't do that. And I do think that's ridiculous, because that's never happened with women.
Yeah, and I think something you said that actually correlated in my mind as you were speaking was even the idea of sexualization, right, which Britney experienced. But I think we take it down from that level of fame and we bring it down to our everyday level of human interaction. What I find very fascinating is when you hear certain men justify, not all men, I'm a huge fan of men, but when you hear certain men justify abuse or sexual assault, the one question that some men will ask is, what was she wearing? What was she doing there? Why did she walk so sultry across the road? You know, it's like the most benign, most almost inhumane line of question, but it's the first question that comes to mind. And even with the best intending men at times, because society is so crafted within, there's this undercurrent of just, you know, patriarchy that's within our psyche, because like you're saying, our first formation is like, this woman sent us into this ever impending doom. And that's our psyche, right? That the woman is constantly the temptress. The woman is the one who leads these liaisons. She's the one who leads these things, like these, you know, moments in time, whenever they are negative. Whenever they are negative. And I want to say this implicitly, because when we lead the charge on, like, you know, scientific discovery and mathematical discovery, oh no, a man has to come proofread that, and then he's like the head honcho in charge. But when it's anything else whereby a man comes out bad or perceivably bad, then it is the woman who becomes an issue. And I think for me, it actually draws me back to, it's interesting for me to see the line of documentaries that are coming out about celebrity. Because before, I remember there was a time about, like, you know, this over glamorizing of, like, you know, being a star and being seen all the time. So now looking at documentaries of Paris Hilton, who was in this Britney documentary too, who released her own documentary about, you know, what she had gone through, the Paris behind the scenes, how she crafted this persona, and Britney looking at her and how this persona was crafted for her as to what's going to sell the most tabloids, what's going to make you the most famous, what's going to keep you on everyone's lips. And all of these narratives really never paid attention to who are these people. Because first and foremost, before they are, a star or, a speaker, whatever they are, they're a human being. So that was my other takeaway from that.
Well, and I think leading on that is also the messaging that we're seeking, because when you're talking about tabloid, it's the most horrendous image that you can get of this person, the most damaging story that you could possibly, talk about. That's what we want. And the messaging there is, if you have mental health issues, we're going to expose you. We're going to share it with the world. We're going to tell them that you're crazy and you've lost your mind. And if you walk out of the house, in sweatpants and looking like you haven't slept all night, because haven't we all at some point? Oh, we're gonna put that out. We're gonna say that you've lost it and you spent all night doing drugs. It's like, are we surprised that so many people keep quiet about mental health? Are we surprised that so many people want to create the social media persona that looks absolutely perfect and never addresses any of the potential, even hiccups that might be going on in life? Why? Because we have this model that if we're not perfect at all times, we're going to be shattered. And that's just like the ultimate expression of that. And I think, again, as media, we have such a responsibility in terms of framing stories and actually creating bridges for people to know that there is support out there. It's very easy to say, charities and organizations run slogans like, you're not the only one, you're not alone, reach out, whatever. But then when we look at mainstream media, that's actually not what's happening. If you are not all together at all times, you're just, you're going to be completely demoralized. So I think these examples are really interesting to analyze, because even though they're the top celebrity levels, the impact of the stories actually does trickle down to the everyday person and our emotional state.
Yeah, and I also want to add something there. I think from the beginning of the interview, I'm probably speaking in with a contrast of men and women. But something I do have to say is the vilification doesn't come from men necessarily. The vilification comes from women, and I know for me, some of my saddest and most devastating, whether it was public or, within at least my public life or my friendships or my environments, have been blows from women. The judgments I've experienced from women and the vilification I've experienced due to the hands of women. So I'm not saying this is something that men do. I'm just saying society structured in order to protect men in that perceivable way. And I think for me, it's actually been very interesting to see with this new generation of Instagram, stars and what's coming up now. At least for the past 2 years or so, mental health is becoming a big conversation. People are coming out and saying, this is my issue. And I think because of that undercurrent is what's been able to catapult people like Paris Hilton forward and saying, society wants to know now. I genuinely don't believe, after what we've experienced in 2020, end of 2019, going into 2020, now into 2021, we're not obsessed with celebrity anymore. We're not as drawn in by the glamour. We want to know, who are you? At your core, what are you doing for the world? Where are you putting your money? Where are you putting your time? Where are you putting your resources? And I think it is becoming a collective shift where all of us are going to have to start answering for those kind of things. Yeah, it's cool that you're famous. Yeah, it's cool that you're rich. Good for you. But now what are you doing for the world? And that's the thing. That's, I think, the biggest, at least, shining light for me is the fact that it is sad to watch Britney's documentary. I can relate to it on so many levels, but at the same time, I'm so happy it's coming out, because all of us are being held to account. We're being held to account for our judgments. We're being held to account for how we view people, how we vilify people, how we put people on a pedestal, and how we celebrate them when they fall from that pedestal. And for me, it's just such I know it's a change, but it's an exciting change. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, I really like what you said. And I think I really want to re-emphasize that, because I think, oftentimes, because there is still a glass ceiling, there is still pay inequality. It's very easy for us as women to go, men. And the reality of the matter is, I completely empathize and feel what you said, that so many times it is women that are the biggest letdown. Whether it be that you're, asking for a helping hand or something like that. Oftentimes I'll much more easily be helped by a man, in terms of a career questioning or something like this. And I think it's also because women have had to claw their way to where they are sometimes. And I think they're so aware of how hard it's been to get to wherever it is that we're at. You're not about to just pull everyone else up, are you? You've paid your dues and everyone else should. I think that mentality has to be shattered, because I genuinely believe that the boat rises together. We're all in the same boat, and we got to just all figure it out, And if a few of us rise and we actually do loan that helping hand, that hand will be lent to us as well. So it becomes this like self-fulfilling prophecy, right, of helping as opposed to shutting down. So completely agree with the shift also that we're viewing with COVID. I think even in corporate businesses, the relevance of not just CSR and CSI, but impact investment, philanthropy, things that are actually having positive ripple effects around the world, is a huge part of the reframing that's taking place at the moment. So I think that's incredibly positive. And certainly, I think we would both love to hear more from our viewers' opinions. How does media affect your own life? Do you ever feel put down by stories that, you empathize with? And what do you think media could be doing better to bridge this gap between inequality between the sexes? And how can we further discourse in a positive way? I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add, Candice.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think this is a conversation, as with many, that we could really talk about at length. And I just, I'm looking forward to seeing how the Britney Spears, situation is going to pan out, because they've gone back to court. And I'm also just looking forward to seeing how companies and individuals, and all of us, I think for the first time in history, every single voice, if you've got a social media, I don't care if you're followed by one person or 100,000 or 1 million people, we all being held to account for what we say and what we put out into the world. And if you are using your voice to be toxic, to be a white supremacist, to be whatever, you are going to be held to account for that. And I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to more people having to, reframe and relook at how they're living their lives. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great change. Difficult, but great.
Yeah, and a time for first. We're having a first female vice president, first president impeached twice. The trial is moving forward. And certainly, in terms of legal proceedings, we're seeing the first of many. So hopefully Britney Spears is not an exception to this rule of firsts. And guys, thank you so much again for watching. Please, if you enjoy this, like, share, follow, and keep tuned for next week's episode of the Candice and Elisa Show.